Hey, hey! We're live again for the seventh time in a row. This is my seventh live today. Well, not today, in the last 2 weeks. I'm getting used to this. Yay! So I have to say, it is not as scary as before. So again, one more time, when you are brave, and you're brave again and again and again, that helps you build your confidence. So, hi everybody. Hi Chris. I'll bring you in the live in a little bit. I just want to welcome first all of these lovely people that are joining us for the 7th live. Can I say in a row? It's not been in a row because I didn't do a live yesterday. Anyways, for me, it feels like it's been in a row. I've been doing so many live, but like I was saying a few seconds ago, it definitely feels better once you do it again and again and again. So I remember my first live, which was not too long ago. I was very scared. This one, less than before. So I'm happy to challenge myself to doing things in new ways. So talk about reframing how we do things and adapting to what's happening right now, huh? Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be doing a pretty awesome live with Chris Guillebeau. Who here knows Chris? Let me know in the comments. Say yes or no, so I know how many people here knows who Chris Guillebeau is. So I'll tell you a little bit about Chris. Chris has an amazing blog. That's how I found out about him, actually. In the middle, wait, you know what? Let me put here the title. Now, okay, you don't know him? You will know him if you don't. Heck yeah. Let's pin this. Instagram. Why are you hard to get? There, pin comment. Okay, small victory. Okay, so I was talking about Chris Guillebeau. Some of you know him, some of you don't, but you will all know him in a little bit. Today's very, very relevant, important topic, how to find the fortune in your own backyard. We will be talking about his new book. It's all about that. And I was going to tell you how I found out about Chris. So Chris has a very big blog where he has lots of readers. He's an amazing writer. He traveled all over the world. I think that's how this journey sort of started, when he quit his job and he was able to travel and blog and then make a living out of that. And then he founded this amazing event called World Domination Summit. So in 2015, I went viral with my project 100 Days Without Fear. And Chris wrote a blog about it. And then suddenly, so many people started writing me and saying, hey, I found out about you through Chris Guillebeau. And I was like, cool. And then another person, and then another person. And then they were like hundreds of people saying, you should follow Chris Guillebeau. I mean, he's talking about you and he's pretty cool. And I realized that, wow, this guy, Chris Guillebeau, he has an amazing community. They're not only listening and following me because of him, but they're all asking me to follow him and read his content. And I was like, that's so cool that he was able to build something like that. So I admire him. Just because of that in that moment, like that's where it all kind of started for me. So I reached out and I'm like, hey, I'm the girl that you wrote the article about. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the girl that faced 100 fears. Let's talk. So we started talking. He told me about his event, World Domination Summit. And then I heard about other speakers, things like you have to go to that event. You have to be a speaker there, talk to Chris. So I talked to Chris and finally we were able to make it happen. So in 2016, I spoke at World Domination Summit, main stage, and I have to say it was my best crowd ever. But not only the crowd, but the whole event, like all the activities, everything. And you know Vanessa Van Edwards? Yes, you do, because we invited her to do a live last week, right? Vanessa, you remember her? She was talking about online courses. So that's where I met Vanessa Van Edwards. Also, I met so many other people, amazing speakers at that event, people that I'm still in contact with. Anyways, not relevant. The point is that he founded that event, and he's also the writer of so many books. So what I was going to tell you is that when so many people started writing to me saying, you should follow Chris, like for real, like he's an amazing author and he has this great blog and he's talking about you, I was like, I feel I know that name. And then I went to my bookshelf and look what I found. Chris Guillebeau book. So I already had his book in my home, and I was like, this is so random. So this guy that wrote this book is talking about me on his blog. So I feel like super excited. I started reading The Art of Nonconformity. I don't even remember if I bought it or if somebody else got me this book, but I started reading it and I was like fascinated with the content of this book. And then I of course bought his other book, The $100 Startup. And then of course I bought his other book, Born for This. And now he's launching this book. Chris, I don't know how many books you have, but I have 4 of your books. I don't know if you have like 8, 20, but this is amazing. You have so many great books and they're all so good, guys. So let's invite Chris so he can tell us more about it and I can shut up. Chris, here you are at Breaks Out, because that would be awesome. Yay!
Hello. Hi.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. That was so kind of you. So fun to listen to the stories and remember those years ago when we first connected. I was such a big fan of your project, so I'm so glad we were able to have you speak at WDS and all those other things. Thank you.
It was such an honor because I was just starting as a speaker. Like I started speaking in 2016. My first speech ever was in March, and then like May, and then this happened in August. So you actually you trusted in me, in my capability, and you gave me a spot as a keynote. So
that's right.
Yeah, thank you.
That's good. Well, you did a great job. So it's good. And you have a book coming out soon, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I have also my book here. I have every book I need in this spot.
That's right. 3 weeks or something, right? 3 weeks, I think, 3.5 weeks.
Oh, no, don't remind me. I don't know. I'm not counting the days.
It's exciting.
Yeah. So tell me, how many books do you have now?
This new book that you were very kind to mention, this is number 7.
Number 7. Wow. Which one was your first one?
The first one that you showed up, that you held, The Art of Nonconformity. That was the first one.
Can I say this is my favorite? Is that?
Sure, you can say anything you want.
Yeah, I really connect so much with the content of this book, and but yeah, let's focus on this one for this live, for this interview. And you say that this is very relevant for what we are currently living. Why?
Well, I did not plan that because as you know, as an author, you write a book like a year ago and then it finally comes out and such. But I mean, this book ultimately is about self-reliance. It's ultimately about helping people to build financial security so that they are less dependent on a company or a government or an organization or anything like that. And when I was first working on it, I was thinking a lot about people who had student loan debt or other kinds of debt from credit cards or whatever else. But now we're in a time when people are having all kinds of financial pressure and just feeling really anxious and worried and afraid, which is hopefully they're watching your channel if they're afraid, but people are just trying to figure out what to do. And my hope is that through this process, a lot of people will begin to think differently about, what do I do next? Maybe the things I believed before are not true, or I can't rely on them, but I have to do something for myself. So I hope this book will be a small part of helping somebody in that way.
And I know that you've been focusing a lot in the last few years, or maybe more than that, in the side hustles. Like that topic, you're actually, I feel it that you're owning that space. I don't know if that's right or not, but in my mind, you're owning side hustle. And you even have a podcast called the Side Hustle.
Side Hustle School.
Side Hustle School that you should listen to that podcast. So it's I love it because they're very short episodes, like 5 minutes each.
Yeah, 5 to 10, pretty short.
Yeah, where you talk about different side.
It's like 1198 or something. And I started in January 1, 2017. And I said I was going to do it for 1 year. And I was worried at the time, like, am I going to be able to find enough, for the year? And I should explain first, like, why I'm doing it and who it's for. So the whole point of the podcast, Side Hustle School, is like, I've done a lot of work for entrepreneurs. And I realized that, like, a lot of people out there don't necessarily want to be a quote unquote entrepreneur, capital E, start a business, et cetera. But everybody, even if you have a good job, you understand how important it is to have more than one source of income. And so I felt like nobody was really talking to those people, like all those people with jobs, students, whatever. And they needed to find a way to make more money or to create security for themselves or build an asset and so on. And so Side Hustle School, the whole point of that was to shine a spotlight on all these different people who are finding a way, like using something they already know, a skill they already have, to create a little business. And so with the podcast, then I'm like telling their stories essentially. And so, yeah, for the first 3 years, I did a different story every day. I'm still doing the podcast every day, but I do some question and answer and such now. It's a little bit more interactive. But it's been a lot of fun to see how many people out there can do different things that you never would have imagined are possible. And that's what it's about. So it has nothing to do with raising money or trying to get investors. It is all about, what can you do for yourself right now to, build this new source of income to give you more security?
That's so relevant today. I mean, we are all being impacted by what's happening, and we are realizing how, like, the risk of having only one source of income. For example, in my case, me and Adam, we even work together, because most couples each have their own thing, and if one fails, at least you have another chance. But the fact that we're working together and in one thing, which is speaking, when this hit, we were like, okay, we should have listened to Chris Guillebeau's podcast more often.
But you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine because you're very resourceful and you're good at thinking things differently. And like, I think a lot of people, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just thinking about this. Like a lot of people, when they're in this situation, they start to panic, and they when you panic, you don't make good decisions. Right. When you panic, you're like making the bad decisions. You're like, maybe I'm going to drive for Uber. Well, you shouldn't be driving for Uber, probably, Michelle. There's probably something else that you can do to figure out, So I think the whole key is like just looking at the situation and realizing that it is reality, but also like understanding that there are other alternatives.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I feel like I interrupted you. So please.
No. That's totally fine. I don't even know what I was saying, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say. That in our case, we were like, well, we should have had more source of income going on at the same time, for sure. And now that's what we're focusing on developing. At this point, we're like, actually, we're grateful that this is happening because it forces us to develop online programs, online talks, so many things online that after, when this is all gone, we will still have that and we'll be able to monetize in different ways. And I think we should all be thinking that way. And that's one way the world should change, right? After this is over, everybody should have more than one source of.
Yeah, I think everybody has the opportunity, at least, let's say, to come out of this better than we are now. Everybody has the opportunity to, because here's the thing, we're all going to remember this time. Like a year from now, 5 years from now, everybody's going to remember it. You remember this time that there was, COVID-19 and everything changed and we couldn't go out of our house, and like everyone's going to remember it. So some of those memories are just, you can't control them. Like what's happening in the situation, you can't control. But wouldn't it be cool to be able to have a memory and say, actually, I used that time to do something different for myself. Like I began, looking at my fears and conquering them. I began, writing a book or starting this little business or something. So I hope, I'm sure you're going to come out of it better than you were before. And I hope a lot of the people watching will too.
I'm sure. If I feel like if they're here, if they're watching, if they're committed to this, then for sure it means that they're already working on themselves and they want to improve. So kudos to everybody here that is watching. And so my question is, I want to know, is your podcast and the side hustle passion that you have inspired you to write this book?
Yeah. So this book, you were kind to mention $100 Startup before. So that book was kind of like the story of accidental entrepreneurs, people everywhere. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yes.
All over the world who are starting different projects and such. But $100 Startup is like a how-to book. It's like a step-by-step book. And there's a lot of people out there in the world who don't read business books, who don't read how-to books. They need to hear this message. Like they need to understand everything that we're talking about self-reliance and creating a new source of income. but they don't read business books basically. And so I wanted to write a story. So this is kind of like $100 startup, but in the form of a story or a narrative, essentially. And so you can read this book and hopefully you'll still be entertained and like you enjoy it, but you're also going to learn something along the way. And so my hope is that it will actually kind of sit deeper with people than just reading like, here's your step one, here's step two, here's step three. But you will go away learning something. So that's my goal with this.
So it's one character, well, the story of one specific character basically throughout the...
Yeah, there's a protagonist, like the main character, and this is a guy named Jake, and he is having a lot of struggle right now, a lot of financial struggle. He is a millennial who works a good job, and he's a hard worker. But like so many people out there, maybe some of the viewers, he has a lot of student loan debt. He has all this debt that he has to pay back from college. And this is affecting all the other parts of his life as well, because it's not just like compartmentalized. If you're experiencing a struggle in one area, it's going to affect other areas too, right? So it's affecting his relationship, it's affecting his day job. He starts to get really worried and he's trying to figure out, what do I do? Like, how can I get out of this? And some of the traditional answers he realizes, don't work, because the traditional answers are like, just work harder, or like try to get a better job. But he already has a good job and he's working hard. Some of them are like, you should join the gig economy. You should be the driver for, the ride share or the delivering food or something. And he's like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's okay, but that's a part-time job. And that's something that you do when you're really young or when you're just like in a transition or something. And so basically the story is like him trying to navigate, okay, what do I do? How do I get out of this process? And he ends up going to a group called The Third Way, which consists of a lot of different people who are all trying to create that freedom for themselves, start a little business. Maybe they want to quit their job and go all in with it, or maybe they just want to have extra income so that if their job changes, like we're seeing now with so many people, then they're not worried, they're not stressed. And so it's a story of him trying to overcome that and different projects along the way.
So The Third Way is like a support group?
The Third Way is a group, it is kind of like a support group of people that are all like have the same idea or the same goal. I call it The Third Way because when you think about starting a business, there's like the first way, which is the most like old school traditional way. I'm going to open a coffee shop. I'm going to open a dry cleaner, a retail store or something, whatever it is. And to do that, you need to have money, you need capital. You have to either have money yourself or you have to borrow it from your credit card, from the bank, from your parents, wherever. And then it also involves risk because, that coffee shop could fail, it might not work out. And then also, then lastly, it takes a long time. Like there's a long time frame. So you could actually spend a couple of years and then realize that wasn't the right idea for you. So that's the first way. And the second way is what people think of more when they think about entrepreneurship is like the startup way. The startup way, Silicon Valley, Shark Tank, all that kind of stuff. I have an idea and I need somebody to come along who has money and to say, okay, now you can go do your idea because here's some money, And so the thing is with those two approaches, the first way and the second way, even as they're different, they're similar because they're both dependent on somebody else. They're both dependent on somebody else, other people, other forces, other externalities and such. And the third way, which is what the money tree is all about, is this new way of people starting a little business, using something they already know without spending money, so without going into any debt, and doing it very quickly, like doing it within 30 days usually, and then seeing what happens. You're not going to build a big business in 30 days, but you can do something. And then if it works, then you do it more. If it doesn't work, you try something different. So that's what the third way is about. And people are doing this all over the world in different ways.
What are some examples of third ways businesses?
Yeah, okay. So on the podcast, right? Like I said, every day is a different story and such. And I thought about this a lot when I was writing the book. So let's see, what have I talked about recently? Recently, I've been talking about this guy who does pancake art. So he makes pancakes. He was like a cook in a diner, like just like a restaurant that's open in the middle of the night in St. Louis, Missouri. And he really liked to make pancake art. Whenever it was slow, he would spend time practicing his pancake art. And he noticed that he got more tips, when he made the pancake look nice. So a friend of his asked him to come and do an event, like a wedding or something, and just make some pancake art for people. And they started doing more and more events like bar mitzvahs and birthday parties and everything. And so then they built this whole business of traveling the world and going to Dubai and London and Paris and doing this pancake art. And so now he's making this really good living. It's like multiple six figures a year. making pancake art from somebody who was just like a cook, in a diner. That's one example. Trying to think what would be good to talk about. I've got lots of different coaches and consultants and people that are like, I'm really good at this one thing. I had some knowledge at some point and I realized other people were also interested in it. And so I started this little project. I'll think of some more examples as we go along.
Yeah. No, I love the pancake example.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
great. So who would you say the money tree is for?
Yeah, so the money tree is, and by the way, thank you so much for this conversation. I see there's some comments there, so I will have to go back and look at all the comments. The money tree is for anybody who wants to make a change in their life, or for anybody who is feeling that kind of financial pressure, or even if they're not like, well, I would say firstly, if you are like unemployed or if you're like really concerned about debt, this is a story for you. But even if you're okay right now, like even if you're like, all right, I'm going to be all right. You still understand that the world is changing, things are different, and it is wise, it's smart, to establish more of your own control over whatever you can. So I think it's for anybody like that, anybody who's like not satisfied with the way things are, wants to do something different with their life, but needs a little bit of like motivation or inspiration. So probably it's the people that come to you, the people that watch your channel, it's like, it's very much about community and like, show me that I'm not alone, show me that I'm not the only person, who feels this way.
Yeah, guys, if you're hearing this and if you can relate to what Chris is saying, I want you to please consider getting this book and do it right now because it's his launch week. When was it out? On the 7th, right?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
2 days ago. So this is brand new. You'd be the first ones to get this book if you order it right now. And also we have to support authors that are launching in the middle of a crisis. I promise it will pay off in the future for you if you do this for us. No, but really, and I know there's so much value in here. And I absolutely love the subtitle, a story about finding the fortune in your own backyard. It already, I don't know, I think that it sparks creativity. Like I just hear that title and I start getting creative. I'm like, yeah, what kind of fortune can I find in my backyard? So do you think that by reading this book, people will start to come up with ideas of their own on how can they make money as a side hustle?
Yeah, I hope so, very much. And I think that's actually more valuable than just telling people what the ideas are. Because sometimes people are asking me a lot of questions like, what is the trend right now? Like, what is the hot, topic or industry? And it's like, I don't mind talking about that. Those are good questions. But wouldn't it be more valuable, more helpful if you could learn to do that for yourself? Because what's relevant now might be different, 2 months from now or 4 months from now. So there's lots of little activities and exercises you can see the main character going through that he's basically learning to think in a different way. And I think everybody can learn to think in a different way. You're not taught this in school. You don't learn like, here is how you develop your curiosity, Michelle. Here is how you become good at observing. But these skills are so important in entrepreneurship or just in making something for yourself. Because if you can pay attention and understand, okay, there is something in my backyard, like you said, and the backyard is a metaphor, right? It's like what's within, what is it that I know about? What skill do I have? Maybe it's something that is connected to the work I'm doing now, or the education that I had, or maybe it's totally different, right? Maybe it's actually something that I just have been really passionate about, excited about, and other people are now interested in it as well. Here's one quick story I was thinking about as well. There was this guy that we had him on Side Hustle School. He was listening to the program the first year, and then he decided to start his project. So this guy is a pastor, like a minister, and because he's a pastor, he's not making a lot of money. And he was really stressed out about it. He used to do like odd jobs and like, handyman stuff, but that was kind of burning him out. And so he decided his passion was like, do you know tabletop games, like role-playing games, like board games and dice? And all that? That was his thing. He was really into it. And so he learned how to make custom dice, and he figured out how to import them from China and get different kinds and all this stuff. And he ended up making like $3,000 to $4,000 a month, like every month, after 6 months or so. And so he's doing this on the side, right? It's just his side project, but it's bringing in like a substantial income. And that then allows him to feel a lot less stressed, a lot less worried, a lot less anxious. He used the money to pay for his wedding, like all these good things about it. So that's an example of somebody, like he doesn't have a specialized skill. It's not like he went back to school and got his MBA and learned about, supply chains and all that stuff. He just kind of had one idea and he pursued it to see what would happen.
Do you think that the majority of the people end up taking that side hustle and making it their full-time job, or?
I think there's some of both. I have a number of people that do, go full time. And then I have a number of people that are like, this is cool. Like I've got this extra income, I don't need to scale it. I don't need to be full time. I actually like the thing that I'm doing, for my day job, but now I don't have to do it all. Like, I think the key point is, what if you could live your life, even if you go to a job, even if you go to a company or whatever, but you live your life in a way that you're going there because you want to go there, not because you have to. That is the key thing. If you're going just because you need this paycheck, you exchange your time for money, then that is a transaction. But if you believe in it, then that's great. You believe in it, you go do it, you've got this other thing. If you stop believing in it, or if all of a sudden the world changes like we're all seeing, or if what was a good situation becomes not a good situation, like your boss is not good after a while or changes boss or something, then you can do something else. I think that is the goal for everybody, to get to where you have options, possibility, and ultimately freedom.
No, for sure. And Adam here has a question. He says, Chris,
saw that. That's great.
If you could teach a high school subject, how would you call it?
How would I call it? I don't know. Life skills, or like real life skills, something like that. Here's how things really work, to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Life hack. I mean, Adam's really good with this, the whole hacking thing. I've seen his project. So it's probably something like that, but it's not even really hacking. It's like, this is how everybody should live their life. It's not meant to be like some secret trip. It's a secret like tip, or here's like a knowledge that's in a box somewhere and like nobody can access this secret mystery. This is supposed to be for everybody. So I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, but that's good question, right? Thank you, Adam. Wherever you are, I'm like, I can't see you, but it's probably around here. So you say that the main character, Jake, goes through different exercises to find out his talent or his like where.
Well, he's finding what he's trying to learn. Sorry, do you have more of a question?
No.
Okay. What he's trying to learn is, what is it that I know about that I can adapt or transform in some way to become a money-making project? I think that is the central question for everyone in all this. Like, this is your central side hustle question. What is it that I have or know that I can then adapt or transform? And so it starts with, he gets a challenge. Like, he goes to this group, and his the mentor of the group challenges him and says, Jake, before you come to the meeting next week, you have to make $1,000. And at first he's like, what, $1,000? Like, if I knew how to make $1,000, I wouldn't be here, right? I wouldn't be in this situation. But like, he thinks about it, they talk it out a little bit, and he finally realizes, he's like, oh, I have some college textbooks from when I was in school that are in my closet that I'm not doing anything with. Like, I kept them there because I thought I would always need them for reference. I've never looked at them once. What if I could start by selling those? And so he goes home and he's like, oh, this is interesting. This is easy. I can go on eBay or some other auction site and list it up. Doesn't take much work. So he starts selling those. And then he notices like the price of other auctions that are ending. And he thinks, what if I could buy something from this auction and then list it again and sell it? It's like very basic arbitrage, essentially. And by the way, as a side note, this is what I did 20 years ago. Like 20 years ago, this is how I got started, like working for myself. I didn't have a grand strategy. It was just like, I needed to like make some money somehow. And so from there, he learns how to resell camera equipment and other stuff. The next stage, which I'll just talk about a little bit because it's in the book, people can read it. But the next stage is like, okay, he has to have a service. So the next stage is a service. What does he know about that he can, help people with in terms of like a consultation or something? So it kind of explores like all these different processes as he goes along.
Sounds fascinating, guys. If you're hearing, I think that we should all be reading this book right now and asking ourselves all of these questions, like go through the same exercises, right? And I think that just that exercise, how to come up with $1,000 in 1 week. I mean, for everybody listening here, what will you guys do? And we all need the money right now. So yeah, I think that's such a great question. And wait, I had another question I was going to ask you after that, and I'm like, got too into what you were saying.
Yeah.
But so what was
I
it?
thought of this. Here's a statistic I thought of. I'll just share while you're thinking. I read
Mm-hmm.
this recently. It was like the average American has $2,500 worth of stuff in their home that could easily be resold. And this is stuff that they don't need. So I'm not talking about something that's essential to you or something that you like. It's just stuff in your closet that you haven't used in a long time. Maybe you upgraded your computer or your iPad at some point, but you still have the old one. Maybe like you used to be into photography or whatever the thing is, video games or something, but now you're not really doing that. Like this is something that's really basic and simple that I think a lot of people should consider if they're in a situation where like I actually need like $500, next week or whatever. I bet a lot of people have something in their closet or wherever it is, their dorm room somewhere, that they could list for sale. And if you do that, that's not what you're going to do for the rest of your life, but you might learn something from that process. It might show you, oh, if I did this, what else could I do? Which, as I said, was how I got started 20 years ago. Like I didn't know anything, and I started like listing things for sale, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. If I learn a little bit about copywriting, about marketing, about taking good photos of my stuff, all these skills, everything I learned is going to help me, get better and better.
And then what was your goal back then when you were selling all these things?
I'm so glad you asked, because the goal was not like, I think people sometimes are like, they want me to say, or you ask these questions of like entrepreneurs and they're like, my goal was to change the world. I wanted to like change the world for all the children everywhere. But like I was 19 years old then. I was 19 years old. I was working, the last job I ever worked, which was for FedEx, like the shipping company. In the middle of the night, I was putting boxes on a truck. That was my job, and I got paid $8 an hour for it. And once I learned to do this, to like buy and sell stuff, I was making like twice as much, like $15 or $16 an hour. I was like, this is great. This is amazing, And so for me, it wasn't like I'm going to build a big business. It wasn't like a charity. It was just, I need to do something for myself. Like right now, I need to do something for myself. And ultimately what I was chasing, I think, was freedom. And that's partly what was so attractive to me about it. It wasn't just like, oh, I can make more money. I mean, that was good too. But it was that, oh, with this, I have control over it. I can set my own schedule. If I get better at it, like I just said, if I get better and improve my skills, I can probably, be even more successful at it. And if I learn this, maybe there's other stuff it just opened up a whole new world, So whether it's reselling or something else, I really encourage people to just try something, because it might lead you to something that you never expected.
That's so true. Whatever we try in life, even if it's like such a silly challenge just for
Yeah.
yourself, I've been realizing that because whatever, I decided to start, I don't know if you saw, but it's my fifth anniversary of my
Yeah.
project. So I decided to record myself watching the videos from the project and upload one by one for 30
Yeah.
days. So I have to choose the best 30 to do that. And just in 3 days that I've been doing the project, you can see my progress. Like it's so obvious. Like the first one, I'm using a terrible blue background. The next one, I learned how to put a nice background. The next one, I learned how to sync things. And you just see project process. So whatever we do, even selling. And I'm wondering right now with everything that is going on, what are some of the side hustles? I don't know if you know the answer to this, but since you've heard of so many, like what are some relevant side hustles today?
Yeah, like today, right now. So here's how you think of it. When like there's something that's changing in the world, whether it's positive or negative, there are going to be like winners and losers. And you should realize that even when something is going well, like if there's progress, then somebody else is not doing well because of it, or some industry, let's say, right? Some industry is not going to do well when a new technology comes along, the old technology is obsolete, and so on. So if you realize that, then you can realize like the opposite is also true. When we're in a time like of disruption and disorder and chaos and fear and all these things, right? Then those are negative effects for the most part. But there also has to be positive effects that come about. So who are the winners, during this time? Not who are the losers, who are the winners? So a couple things. I think, first of all, remote work. Everybody is working remotely now, and it's new to so many people. So many corporate employees. I'm getting so many emails about people who are like, I've wanted to work from home for years, and my boss has never let me, but now they have to, basically. And people are also just trying to figure out, how do I do it, The Zoom technology, right, has 200 million users, and they had 10 million users last December. So anything to do with remote work, with web conferencing, anything that brings people together in that way. The next thing would be wellness, like anything with wellness, right? Because everybody's, like stuck at home in different ways. So anything like at-home exercise equipment, a lot of coaches and trainers that are kind of transitioning to do virtual stuff. Another story I had was a woman who is a belly dancer, and she used to teach belly dancing classes, and now she does virtual belly dancing classes. So she's actually, making money doing that. So anything with wellness, it could also be meditation. It could be, how can I figure out my next steps, coaching and such. And the last thing I would say is a big part of what you're doing right now, which is community. Anything to do with community and connection. People are longing for this, so much, partly because we're all isolated, but we are all isolated at the same time. So it's weird, right? Because we're like very alone, but yet we're all experiencing it in the same way. And so we have a desire to connect. So what I would ask, the viewers is like, what can you do to help people connect? What can you do? What is your 100 Fears project? What is your side hustle, whatever you want to call it? Like, you're not going to solve every problem in the world because so much is out of our control right now, but there probably is like one piece of the puzzle that you can solve.
For sure. That, and what about product? Do you think, well, because right now I am thankful that shipping is still happening.
Yeah.
The moment that shipping stops and Amazon stops, then that's when I'll start to suffer this way more. And also, for example, we have books. At least we can get, we're not doing the events, but we can get our books shipped. So that definitely like calms me down. And I know that whatever I need, even though I can't go out and get it, I can always order it. So I've been thinking also, what are some products, like physical products? Because I think that the few things you've mentioned are more digital, which is of course easier because you don't need to spend, but I don't know if there are some.
I think those same topics that I mentioned, there's still products, that will help all of those things. And as you said, like, things are still shipping. Like, there's various delays and such, but even from like China and overseas, like now that's getting a little bit more on track. So what products do people need to work better at home? People all of a sudden at home are spending a lot more time, right? For a lot of people, they used to like leave in the morning, they wouldn't come back until late at night. They only slept in their home. Now they're there all the time. What would make them more comfortable? What would make them feel more healthy? How do they get a better video screen? Because now they're doing all these online meetings. There's a lot of stuff there. So there's products for that. What's the next thing we talked about? Wellness. I mean, there's so many things, so many businesses there. You got essential oils, you've got exercise equipment that you could send, books, tools, resources. I feel like there's a product answer for everything that's digital.
And I'm glad that you mentioned essential oils, because I have one of my students from one of my courses, she's a makeup artist. And throughout my course, she said that throughout the questions that I was asking them, she realized that she was actually interested in selling doTERRA essential oils. So she got into it, and just yesterday, so she sent me a message and to thank me. She said, thank you for your course, because I started selling doTERRA because of that. And right now I don't have anybody to do the makeup because everybody's at home, but I'm still selling doTERRA. So it's a great example of the diversification of and the side hustle, such an important topic right now. What do you think the main takeaway from your book that people will walk away saying?
Okay, I hope that people will read the book and go away with a sense of possibility, and go away with a sense of like, I can do this. That for me would be the greatest thing. And like, your debut book is coming out really soon. I bet you'll experience this too. What I have learned from the very first book is, I don't necessarily want people to say like, I read your book and it was a good book. Like, I hope they think it's a good book, right? But that doesn't really, that's just like kind of surface level. What you really want people to say is like, I read your book and then I thought differently about something. It gave me the courage to believe in myself more. And it maybe showed me a practical way to like walk out this idea that I've had, where I realized that I wasn't alone. I realized that I could do something, and it just made me feel a little bit better about myself. I think that's like my goal and what I hope people will take away from it. And not just in an inspirational way, but also in a practical way. It's like, I can do this, and now I know like what my first step is. That's what I want. Definitely.
Taking action is what it's all about. It goes beyond the inspiration. It goes beyond the entertainment. It's actually taking, and that, same as you, is my whole goal is for
Yeah,
people to
right.
read this, and then they
Yep.
come back and they tell me exactly what they did
That's so
after
good. That's so
reading it.
good. Yeah.
And that's actually one thing that I do after my presentation. So
Mm,
after I speak, I send an email to
mm,
everybody that's subscribed to my list, and I
mm,
ask them there, can you please reply to this email saying
mm.
one courageous act you
Yeah.
did after hearing me speak? And I
That's so
always
good.
send it 24 to 48 hours after I
Mm,
presented. So they don't have a lot of time,
yeah,
they have,
right.
and I still get a lot of answers. People
Mm,
saying, I spoke to more people, I raised my
it's
hand,
great.
I decided to present, I volunteered,
Yeah.
and you know which one I get a lot, which for
What's
me
that?
is funny. I use the restroom on the airplane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
People are
many
afraid of
people
that. I
are
see.
afraid of
Okay.
that. I would
Yeah.
never think, but I get that
Okay.
over and over again because
Yeah.
yeah, all of these
Well,
conferences.
people are afraid of all kinds of things. I think you learn, through your project. I think it's really good
Hmm.
that I mean, you've obviously been very smart about this, and I think it's good that you actually send it so quickly, like 24 hours or 48 hours, because the urgency is so important. And maybe this is also a good thing about this time that we're in now is like people are feeling this urgency.
Hmm.
If you've ever heard this, like, if not now, when? Like, what are you waiting for? All this kind of stuff. Like, this is the time. This is
Yeah.
the time to make a change because, as I said, disruption, opportunity, progress, possibility. This is the time.
It is. It is. It's. I love a term that we talked about in one of our podcasts, which is, and this is with a coach that we
Mm.
brought to, because I don't know if you know, but we have a podcast called
Hmm.
From the Plane that we only record as we're flying. So it's just me and Adam talking. And now that we have to do it here, we call it From the Couch, and we have guests.
That's great. That's great. So you have
Yeah.
adapted. You're adapting and learning as you go,
Exactly.
evolving.
So we adapted, and we've been bringing therapists,
Mm.
coaches to our
Mm.
podcast, and
That's
and
great.
we brought this coach, and she's talked about an active pause. So this is pause for
Mm.
everybody, but it's an
Yeah.
active pause.
Yeah.
We should be challenging ourselves this time to
Hmm.
evolve in one
That's
way or
good.
another. And
I
like you
like
were
that.
saying at the beginning, to look back
Hmm.
and remember this
Mm.
as a good, have this as a good memory, not be
Yeah.
a bad memory where like
Right.
everything went to hell. It's more like,
Right.
yeah, the time where I started my business, the time where I learned about this or had this
Hmm.
idea, like, yeah, so
You
awesome.
know,
Yeah, tell me.
Go ahead. No, no, you guys. I
No,
was
no,
going to
no,
say,
you, yeah.
historically, so many big changes have come out of these times of like trauma or disruption or something, and so many businesses, like some of the major corporations in America and elsewhere, like came out of the depression or out of a recession. So I think if you can think about that for a big company, what can you do, for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. And I want to ask you before we leave, and I just wanted to say that we have one question. You know how
Okay.
they ask
Yeah.
questions
Great.
there, but
Uh-huh.
not in the comments. Like it has a question mark, and
Oh, I see. Okay.
you see. So I wanna
Okay.
like open it up and see what it is, because I don't
Sure.
know. But before that, because I'm curious and I want to ask you
Mm.
this: what's happening with World Domination Summit? So this year was the last
Yeah,
year.
right. This was going to be year number 10 and the last year. I felt like starting 3 years ago, I wanted to have an end to it just because a lot of things don't end well. They just keep going on forever, I was like, let's build powerfully to like a conclusion of this story, and then we'll have another story of something else. But yes, like as it kind of got closer, like, what are we going to do? So we did make the decision to postpone, not to cancel, but to postpone. And so we are going to do it next summer now. So it's like WDS 2020 will now be held in the summer of 2021. And for everybody out there, in the community who has said, like, I don't want WDS to end, I'm like, well, now it goes on, for one more year at least. That's the
I
good news.
think, yeah, I think that was a sign. I don't know.
That's,
I got so
that's funny.
sad when I heard that it was going to be the
Hmm.
last year. It's
Yeah.
such an amazing
Well, I'd
event.
love to have you and Adam back next year. Now we can plan
Yes,
for a year.
exactly. I can
Mm,
already put it in the
mm.
calendar. So let's check out what this question is about. It says, how do you manage to write so many books in a few years and still do so many side hustles next to it? Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. I really feel very fortunate because I love what I do, and I honestly look forward to it. And like, if I finish one project, for me, it's kind of like, what's next? And I don't think it's like a bad thing. For me, it's like this, I have found the kind of thing that I really like to do. And so I think the most effective productivity tip, like people are often asking about hacks and tips and such, like we were talking about. And I think like the best hack is to love what you do. And if you love what you do, then everything else is easier, right? You know, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to be really, really efficient at the wrong things. You know, you could be really efficient at doing something that is not what you love to do or what you're supposed to be doing or what you can contribute to the world, and you'll get like, you know, 1% better, 2% better at it. But if you can find the right thing, which like I said, I feel fortunate, then you're like 80% there. So that's the first thing. And then I guess I also just like writing books. Like for me, a book is not a product, or it's not like a buy my book so you can hear about something else. Like I actually really, really believe in the value of books, of changing people's lives, because I've read so many books that have changed my life. So for me, that's always been kind of the primary thing.
Well, thank you so much for writing so many awesome books and changing so many people's lives through the books, through the events, through the podcast. Like really, I don't know, you've impacted my personal life in so many ways. So I am grateful for you. So please continue to putting great content out there, inspiring all of us. And if you're watching and you don't follow Chris, go follow Chris. I think that if you click on that little corner there, you'll go immediately to his profile. And guys, this book, I think it has the potential to change your life. So if this is an active pause for you, I mean, this is a good way to start. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. It's a wonderful conversation. Like I said, it's really good to see you. I'm excited about your book as well. I look forward to supporting it, and I hope to see you and Adam sometime. Well, thanks to everybody for watching. It's awesome.
You are part of it.
Yeah, good. Am I there?
Where are you? Here.
Good. Okay.
Chris Guillebeau. There you are.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's fun. Awesome.
So thank you for being part of my book. I appreciate it so much. Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
an honor.
Cool.
All right, Chris, take care. Thank you
so much
for tuning in.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. I'll keep reading this comment. Thank you both. Thank you. Well, I'm glad people are enjoying this conversation. I'll record it. Yeah. I'll record it. I'll edit the best takeaways and put it on my IGTV. I already have an editor working on this stuff, so that's pretty cool. All right, I think we are good to go. Everybody, enjoy your evening. Bye.
Bye.